Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Sarah woke up that morning like any other. Robbie had already left for work, leaving only a dirty cup in the sink. She looked at that cup and felt a strange emptiness. How many times had she woken up alone in recent years? How many conversations had been reduced to, "How was your day?" followed by a mechanical, "Fine." Her marriage to Robbie had started full of promises. They met in college, fell in love quickly, married young. But 7 years later, routine had devoured everything. Sex was scheduled for Saturday nights, always the same way, always the same rhythm. Robbie was a good man, hard-working, faithful. But Sarah felt like she was just existing beside him, living life on autopilot. When her boss announced she would have to travel to a conference in Chicago, Sarah felt a pang of excitement. It would be the first time in years she'd sleep somewhere else, have a different routine. Robbie barely reacted when she told him. "Oh, cool. How long will you be gone?" was all he said, before turning his attention back to his phone. The hotel in Chicago was elegant. Sarah checked in, went up to her room and threw herself on the bed. She looked at the ceiling and thought, is this all there is? 32 years old, married, a decent career, but a constant feeling that she was missing something important. That night, after a day full of boring meetings, Sarah went down to the hotel bar. She needed a drink, something to break the monotony. The bar was half empty, jazz music playing softly. She ordered a wine and sat on one of the high stools. "First time in Chicago?" a voice asked beside her. Sarah turned and saw a man about 40 years old, dark hair, easy smile. He had that kind of confidence that comes from someone who knows exactly the effect he has on people. "It is," she replied, feeling warmth rise to her face. "Dylan," he extended his hand. "Sarah." They started talking. Dylan was funny, interested, asked real questions about her life. He wanted to know what she thought, what she liked, what her dreams were. When was the last time someone had asked about her dreams? Sarah had a second glass of wine, then a third. Dylan told stories of travels, of places he'd been. He made Sarah laugh in a way she'd forgotten she could. The hours passed like minutes. The bar began to empty. Dylan put his hand over hers and asked, "Want to come up for one last drink?" Sarah knew what that meant. Her heart raced. The voice of reason screamed at her to say she was married, that she needed to go to sleep, that this was crazy. But a part of her, a part that had been suffocated for years, whispered, "Why not?" "Okay," she heard her own voice say. In his room, everything happened fast and slow at the same time. Dylan kissed her with an intensity that left her breathless. His hands knew exactly where to touch, how to touch. Sarah found herself responding in ways she'd never experienced. With Robbie, sex was an obligation fulfilled. With Dylan, it was something completely different. She felt alive, desired, present in every second. Afterward, lying beside him, reality began to invade. What had she done? Sarah felt her chest tighten, guilt come like a wave. She had just cheated on Robbie. 7 years of marriage thrown away in one night. She went back to her room at 3 in the morning. She showered, scrubbing her skin hard, as if she could erase what had happened. She cried in the shower, promising herself she would never do it again. But when she got home, when she hugged Robbie and he just gave her a quick kiss on the forehead before turning back to the TV, something inside her broke completely. The guilt was there, heavy, suffocating. But there was also a question, is this all I deserve? 3 months later, Sarah had to travel again. Another conference, another city. And Dylan was there. He had somehow found out she would be at that hotel, on that date. Coincidence, he said with that smile. But Sarah knew it was a lie. And she went to him again. This time the guilt came weaker. Sarah started creating justifications in her head. Robbie is so distant, I deserve to feel something, this doesn't mean anything. Every time she traveled, Dylan was there. Every time, Sarah gave in. She was addicted to that feeling, to that man who made her feel like she was more than just an invisible wife. It was on the 5th trip that Sarah saw. Dylan had left his phone on the nightstand. The screen lit up with a message, "Miss you. When are you coming back? The kids are asking about you." Sarah picked up the phone, her heart freezing. The contact photo was of a blonde woman, smiling. The name was Home. "You're married," Sarah said, her voice coming out as a whisper. Dylan was in the shower. He came out wrapped in a towel, saw Sarah holding the phone and sighed. "Sarah. You're married. You have kids." "It's complicated," he began, but Sarah was already grabbing her things. "You're married," she repeated, feeling nausea rise. "And so am I. What are we doing?" Dylan tried to hold her, to say that what they had was special, that he and his wife were only together for the kids. But Sarah was already walking out the door. In the taxi back to the airport, she cried. She cried because she had become exactly the type of person she'd always judged. She cried because she had wasted months on a fantasy that was as fake as everything else in her life. The promotion came 2 weeks later. Sarah would be regional director, would work from the central office, no travel. When her boss gave her the news, she almost burst into tears right there. It was as if the universe was giving her a second chance. "I'll do things differently," she promised herself. "I'll fix my marriage." But how do you fix something that's been broken for so long? Sarah started slowly. One night, after dinner, she kissed Robbie in a different way. He seemed surprised, but responded. She took the initiative, guided, applied things she had learned. Robbie was confused, but happy. "Where did you learn that?" he asked once, laughing. "I read some things," Sarah lied, her heart tightening. But it worked. In the following weeks, Robbie started looking at her again. Really looking. They talked more, laughed more. The marriage was being reborn, and Sarah clung to that feeling like a drowning person clings to a buoy. It was Robbie who brought up having a baby. They were having dinner at a restaurant when he held her hand and said, "I think it's time for us to have children. What do you think?" Sarah felt her eyes fill with tears. "I'd love that," she said, and it was true. Trying to get pregnant brought an intimacy they'd never had. Each encounter had purpose, but also had connection. Sarah felt like she had finally left Dylan behind, that she had found her way back to her real life. Until the phone rang. It was her boss, tense. "Sarah, we have a crisis with the Seattle client. I need you to go there tomorrow. I know you're in your new position, but it's either you or we lose the account. 3 days, maximum." Sarah felt her stomach turn. Seattle. The same city where she had met Dylan for the last time. "Are you sure it needs to be me?" she tried to argue. "Absolutely. Sorry, I know it's last minute," she told Robbie that night. He was disappointed but understanding. "It's work," he said, kissing her forehead. "Just don't take long." On the plane, Sarah convinced herself everything was fine. Dylan was probably in another city, with another woman. That was over months ago. She was a different person now. She checked into the hotel, went up to her room and started preparing her things for the next day's meeting. She was focused, professional. Everything would be fine. Until someone knocked on the door. Sarah opened it without thinking. And there was Dylan. "Hi, Sarah," he said, that smile on his face. She tried to close the door, but he put his foot in the way. "Wait. I just want to talk." "How did you know I was here?" Sarah felt fear begin to crawl up her spine. "I have my contacts. I heard you'd be in Seattle. Thought I'd make it a surprise." "This is harassment." You need to leave. Dylan entered anyway, closing the door behind him. His energy was different. Colder. More calculated. I missed you, he said, approaching. I'm trying to get pregnant with my husband, Sarah said, her voice trembling. Please, leave. Get pregnant? Dylan laughed. With Robbie? That boring guy who barely touches you? You know his name? I know a lot about you, Sarah. I've learned to know the women I get involved with well. Sarah felt the air leave her lungs. Get out of my room. Now. Dylan took his phone from his pocket. Before I go, I wanted to show you something. He turned the screen toward her. Sarah felt her legs weaken. It was a photo of her. Naked. In his bed. She remembered that night, but had never noticed he was taking photos. I have several, Dylan said, his voice casual. Videos too. You look beautiful in the recordings, you know? You filmed me? Of course. I always film. You never know when it might be useful. Sarah leaned against the wall. What do you want? One last encounter. Tomorrow night. You come to my room, we spend a few hours together, and then I delete everything. Simple. And if I refuse? Dylan shrugged. Then Robbie gets a very interesting email. With attachments. Imagine his face seeing the proper wife he has at home doing, well, all those things. Sarah felt the room spin. This is a crime. It's blackmail. Prove it. You came to my room voluntarily every time. There's nothing criminal about that. Just a couple of adults having fun and, well, I like to keep souvenirs. He left a paper with the room number on the table. Tomorrow, 9 at night. If you don't show up, I press a button and your life becomes hell. Dylan opened the door and left, leaving Sarah there, paralyzed. She fell on the bed and cried until she felt sick. How had she gotten here? How had she let everything fall apart like this? The image of Robbie seeing those photos, those videos, made her want to disappear. Sarah thought about calling the police, but what would she say? That she had cheated on her husband multiple times and was now being blackmailed? Would they believe her? Help her? Or just judge her? She spent the night awake, thinking about running, about disappearing, about anything other than giving in to that humiliation. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Robbie's face discovering the truth. The next day, the meeting was a blur. Sarah could barely concentrate, giving automatic answers while her mind ran in desperate circles. When it ended, she went down to the hotel restaurant. She needed to eat something, even without hunger. She needed to think. She was pushing food around, lost in thought, when the waitress approached. A Latina woman about 50 years old, with kind eyes. Honey, are you okay? She asked softly. Sarah looked up and, without understanding why, broke down. I need help, she whispered. The waitress looked around and sat down in front of her. Tell me. And Sarah told everything. Every horrible detail, every mistake, every moment of weakness. She talked about Robbie, about Dylan, about the photos, about the blackmail. She expected judgment, expected the woman to get up disgusted and leave. But the waitress just held her hand. My name is Maria, she said. And you're not the first woman to tell me a story like this. What do you mean? I work part-time with a support group for victims of sexual violence and blackmail. What this man is doing to you is a crime. A serious crime. But I went to him. I chose. You chose to have relations with him. You never chose to be filmed, photographed, or blackmailed. That changes everything. Sarah felt a spark of hope. Is there something I can do? Maria took out her phone. Let me call a friend. She'll want to talk to you. 20 minutes later, Sarah was in a car with 2 law enforcement agents. One of them, Agent Torres, explained the plan. You'll go to his room as agreed. But you'll be wearing a microphone. You'll provoke him, make him repeat the threats, admit he has the photos, that he's blackmailing you. It needs to be clear, without ambiguity. What if he notices? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. He expects you to be scared. He'll interpret your nervousness as fear of him, as submission. Use that. At 9 o'clock that night, Sarah knocked on Dylan's room door. The microphone was attached under her blouse, invisible. Her heart was beating so hard she was sure he would hear it. Dylan opened the door with that smile. I knew you'd come. Women like you always come. Women like me? Bored. Needy. Desperate for attention. He pulled her inside and closed the door. Robbie is lucky to still have you. For now. About the photos. Sarah began, trying to keep her voice steady. Oh yes, the photos. And the videos. I have everything saved in 3 different places. Cloud, external hard drive, a flash drive that stays in the bank safe. Dylan poured himself a drink. You can relax. If you're good today, I'll delete everything. Promise. How do I know you'll follow through? Trust me. I'm a man of my word. He laughed. Well, more or less. Actually, I think I'll keep a copy. You never know when I might need you again. Sarah felt anger replace fear. Do you do this with other women? Of course. I have a pretty interesting collection. Married ones are the best. They have more to lose. Dylan approached her. But you're special, Sarah. One of my favorites. One of your favorites, Sarah repeated. How many are there? About 10, 12. I lost count. He put the drink aside. Enough talk. You came here for a reason. That's when the door burst open. 2 men and a woman entered, all wearing police vests. Dylan went white. Dylan Mitchell, you're being charged with blackmail, extortion and illegal recording, Agent Torres said, handcuffs already in her hands. This is a setup. Dylan yelled, backing away. She consented to everything. We just recorded you admitting to having photos and videos of her without consent, blackmailing her to have sex under threat, and even confessing to having done this with at least 10 other women, Torres replied. You have the right to remain silent. Dylan looked at Sarah with pure hatred. You bitch. One more charge, Torres smiled. Threat. It took an hour going through Dylan's belongings. They found the external hard drive, the flash drive was in his pocket. The cloud password was extracted from his phone. Everything was there. Photos and videos of Sarah. But also of so many other women. Frightened faces, exposed bodies, moments that should be private turned into weapons. Dylan sat on the bed, defeated. Okay. Okay. I'll delete everything. Just let me go. That'll be decided by a judge, Torres said. But if you cooperate now, if you delete everything in front of us and provide the complete list of victims, that might help your case. Dylan looked at the ceiling, then at Sarah. You ruined my life. You ruined your own life, Sarah replied, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. It took 2 hours. Dylan deleted every file, every backup, every digital trace. He provided names, hotels, dates. The list was too long, too painful. Sarah thought of all those women, living with the same fear she had lived with. When they finished, Torres turned to Dylan. You have 2 options. Cooperate fully, contact each of these women and apologize, participate in a mandatory program about consent and predatory behavior, and maybe, just maybe, you avoid prison. Or you fight this and I personally make sure every prosecutor, every judge, every relevant person sees exactly the kind of man you are. Dylan just nodded, all the charm, all the confidence evaporated. Sarah left that room feeling like she had woken from a nightmare. Maria was waiting in the hallway, with a hug and a tissue. "You were very brave," Maria said. "I was an idiot. I put myself in that situation. You made mistakes. But that never gives anyone the right to do what he did." On the flight home, Sarah looked out the window and thought about Robbie. The secret was still there, heavy in her chest. But at least Dylan had disappeared from her life forever. At least those photos, those videos, had been destroyed. When she got home, Robbie hugged her. "How was the trip?" "Difficult," Sarah said, and it was true in more ways than he would ever know. That night, lying beside her husband, Sarah made a silent promise. She would make this marriage work. She would be the wife Robbie deserved. She would bury Dylan and everything he represented so deep it would never resurface. And for a while, she really believed she could. For years passed like a fast-forwarded movie. Sarah got pregnant 3 months after that trip to Seattle. It was a girl, whom they named Emma. 2 years later came Lucas. Robbie was radiant, fulfilled, exactly the father Sarah always imagined he would be. He woke up in the middle of the night to change diapers, sang off-key lullabies, cried with emotion at every developmental milestone of the children. Sarah dedicated herself to motherhood with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Each feeding, each bath, each bedtime story was executed with perfection. She wanted to be the mother her children deserved. But deep down, somewhere dark in her consciousness, Sarah knew she was trying to compensate. She was trying to be good enough to balance the mistake she had made. Dylan had become a distant memory. Sarah rarely thought about him, and when she did, it was with a mixture of disgust and relief. Relief for having escaped, for those photos having been destroyed, for Robbie never having found out. Life had found a comfortable rhythm. Robbie had been promoted, Sarah worked part-time from home to spend more time with the children. They had bought a bigger house, with a yard where Emma and Lucas could play. Sundays were for family barbecues. Wednesday nights were for watching shows after the kids went to sleep. It was a normal, peaceful, safe life. It was on an ordinary Tuesday when everything collapsed. Sarah was in the kitchen preparing dinner when she heard the front door open. Robbie was arriving earlier than usual. She smiled, thinking it would be a pleasant surprise. "Honey, you're home early. Dinner will be ready in." She stopped when she saw his face. Robbie was pale. He was holding a yellow envelope in his hands, the kind of envelope used for important correspondence. His eyes were red. "Robbie? What happened?" Sarah felt her heart race. Someone had died. He had lost his job. Something terrible had happened. "We need to talk," he said, his voice coming out strange, too controlled. "The kids are in their room playing." Sarah turned off the stove and dried her hands. "You're scaring me when you talk like that." "What is it?" Robbie sat at the kitchen table and placed the envelope in front of him. He kept looking at that object as if it were a bomb about to explode. "I received this today at work. It came addressed to me, personally." Sarah approached. "Who's it from?" "From a man named Dylan Mitchell." The world stopped. Sarah felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. That name. That damn name she had buried so deep. She began, but her voice failed. "You know that name," Robbie said. He was looking at her now, studying her face, searching for any reaction. "And he found it." Sarah knew he found it because she saw the exact moment when suspicion turned into certainty in his eyes. "Robbie, I can explain. So it's true. Everything that's in here is true." He opened the envelope and took out several sheets of paper. "I want to hear it from you. Before I read this out loud, I want you to tell me the truth." Sarah leaned against the counter. Her legs were shaking so much she was afraid she'd fall. What did he write? Sarah. The truth. Now. 4 years ago, when I was traveling for work, I got involved with someone. It was a terrible mistake. It's over. It's been over for years. Got involved, Robbie repeated, his voice starting to rise. You slept with another guy. Say it right. Sarah felt the tears begin. Yes. I cheated on you. But it was a long time ago and I. How many times? Robbie. How many times, he shouted, and Sarah heard Emma cry in the bedroom. Several, she whispered. For a few months. Whenever I traveled. Robbie let out a bitter laugh, without any humor. A few months. And you'd come home and pretend everything was fine. You'd kiss me, sleep beside me, wake up with me. I ended everything. When I found out he was married, I ended it. Oh, so you have ethical standards. How comforting. Robbie started reading the letter. Dear Robbie, my name is Dylan Mitchell and I'm dying of pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave me 3 months, maybe less. I have many regrets in life, and one of them involves your wife. Sarah closed her eyes. She heard Emma calling Mommy from the bedroom, but she stayed paralyzed there. Robbie continued reading. For months, Sarah and I maintained an affair. She would come to my hotels, we'd spend the night together. I treated her badly, manipulated her, did things that shame me today. I'm writing because I believe you deserve to know the truth before I leave. Your friend with regret, Dylan Mitchell. He's lying about some things, Sarah said quickly. He was arrested. He was blackmailing me with photos. The police. Photos? Robbie stood up. There are photos? There were. They were destroyed. The police made him delete everything. The police were involved and you never told me? Robbie ran his hands through his hair. What else did you hide from me? I was trying to protect you. Trying to protect our family. Our family, Robbie laughed again in that horrible way. Emma and Lucas. Are they my children? Sarah felt like she'd been punched. How can you ask that? How can I? He exploded. You cheated on me for months, hid an affair, involvement with police, photos, and you're surprised I'm questioning the paternity of the children? They're yours. I'm absolutely certain. Absolutely certain based on what? You were sleeping with 2 men at the same time. How do you know? Because I know when they were conceived. Because I controlled everything. Because. I want a DNA test, Robbie interrupted. Robbie, please. Is this negotiable? Because either you agree, or I'll go to court to request it anyway. Your choice. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. Okay. We'll do the test. Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, holding her teddy bear. Why is Daddy yelling? Robbie looked at his daughter and Sarah saw the moment he broke down. He knelt and opened his arms. Come here, sweetie. Daddy was just a little nervous about work. Sorry for yelling. Emma ran to him and hugged him. Robbie closed his eyes and held her as if she were the only real thing in the world. When he opened his eyes again and looked at Sarah, there was something broken there that she knew she could never fix. I'm going to sleep in the guest room, he said, his voice dead. Tomorrow we're going to the lab to do the test. And after that, we'll decide what to do. The next 3 weeks were silent hell. Robbie barely spoke to Sarah. He was a present father with the children, played with them, put them to bed, but every time he looked at Sarah, there was a wall of ice between them. Sarah tried to talk several times. She explained how the marriage was difficult, how she had felt invisible, how Dylan had been a mistake she regretted every day. Robbie listened in silence and then simply left the room. The test results arrived on a Thursday. Sarah was bathing Lucas when Robbie entered the bathroom with the sealed envelope. "It arrived," he said. "Do you want to open it alone?" Sarah asked, drying her hands. "You already know the result, right? You're so confident. They're your children, Robbie." He opened the envelope right there, read in silence. Sarah saw his shoulders relax minimally. He handed her the paper. 99.99% probability of paternity for Emma. 99.99% for Lucas. "Thank God," Sarah whispered. "Yes," Robbie said. "Thank God." Sarah hoped that would change something, that the relief would bring a possibility of reconciliation. But Robbie just grabbed Lucas's clean clothes and started dressing him after the bath. It was on the weekend that he asked to talk after the children went to sleep. Sarah had hope. Maybe, with the test confirming paternity, they could rebuild. They sat in the living room. Robbie had a notepad in his hand, full of notes. "I've thought a lot these past days," he began. "I consulted a lawyer, a therapist, even a priest, although I'm agnostic. I wanted different perspectives. Robbie, I want to save our marriage," Sarah said. "I'll do anything. I know you do. But I need to speak and you need to listen, okay?" Sarah nodded. "When I received that letter, my first thought was that it was a lie. Some crazy person trying to cause trouble. But then I saw your face when I said his name. And in that second, 4 years of trust shattered. I'm so sorry. Let me finish. Please." Robbie took a deep breath. "I kept thinking about all the times you came back from trips. You'd kiss me, say you missed me. We'd have sex. You'd look me in the eyes and lie. 4 months. I ended everything before getting pregnant. Before we decided to have children. You think that makes it better? That you stopped before getting pregnant so everything's forgiven?" Robbie shook his head. "Sarah, you had sex with another man and then came home and had sex with me. How many times? 10? 20? Sarah looked down. "And the worst part," he continued, his voice cracking, "is that I remember thinking our marriage was improving. That you were more present, more affectionate, more, everything. But it was a lie. You were applying techniques you learned sleeping with the guy. I was trying to fix things. Trying to hide things," Robbie corrected. "You had 1,000 opportunities to tell me. Before we got pregnant. During the pregnancy. When Emma was born. When Lucas was born. 4 years of opportunities and you chose to lie in each one of them. Because I was afraid of losing you. Of losing our family. So you preferred to build a family based on lies." He wiped his eyes. "The therapist told me that infidelity can be overcome. That couples go through this and survive. But there are conditions. Total transparency. Genuine remorse. Willingness to rebuild." "I have all of that," Sarah said quickly. "I know. I see it. But here's the problem, Sarah. I look at you and see the person who betrayed me. I look at you and remember that every kiss after trips tasted like a lie. I look at you and wonder what else you hid. What else you'll hide. I would never hide anything else. You said that when we got married too. At the time of the rings, the promises. And look where we are." Robbie breathed shakily. "I tried, Sarah. I spent 3 weeks trying to convince myself I could get past it. But every time you touch me, I freeze. Every time I look in your eyes, I see you leaving a hotel room with him. That can be worked on. In therapy, with time. I consulted 3 different therapists. You know what they all said? That if I'm considering ending it before even trying therapy, then the decision is already made. I'm just looking for permission." Sarah felt her chest tighten. You want a divorce. I want to be able to look at my wife without feeling disgust. I want to be able to touch her without trembling with anger. I want to be able to trust again. And I tried to convince myself that's possible, but every time I close my eyes, I see you two together. And it's killing me. Robbie, please. I want a divorce, he said, the words coming out like broken glass. I'm going to ask for joint custody. 50-50. I'm going to be present in their lives, I'm going to continue being the father they deserve. But you and me, it's over. Sarah started crying in a way she had never cried before. Big, ugly, desperate sobs. Robbie stood up and went to her, put his hand on her shoulder for a second, but then pulled back. I still love you, he said softly. That's the part that hurts most. I love who I thought you were. But the real woman, the one who betrayed and lied to me, I need to learn to forget. He went to the guest room and closed the door. The next day, Robbie talked to the children. Sarah stayed in the kitchen listening, her heart breaking. Daddy and Mommy are going to live in separate houses, he explained with a patience that made Sarah want to scream. But you'll see both of us all the time. Nothing will change in the love we have for you. Did you fight? Emma asked, worried. Sometimes adults realize they're happier in different houses. But we're still a family. Just different. Lucas was too young to understand completely, but Emma was 4 years old. She was smart. Was it Mommy's fault? Sarah felt a stab in her chest. It doesn't work like that, sweetie. Sometimes things just happen. But Emma had already decided. For the next months, she would be distant with Sarah. She'd wake up crying wanting her father. She'd refuse the food Sarah prepared. It was as if she knew, on some instinctive level, that her mother had broken the family. The divorce process took 8 months. 8 months of lawyers, paperwork, division of assets. Robbie was fair. Even generous. He could have made everything more difficult, but chose the easier path for the good of the children. Sarah continued working, dedicating herself to work with a new ferocity. She was promoted twice in 1 year. She became known as someone reliable, ethical, dedicated. People at the office thought she was an example. If they only knew. The weeks with the children were both a blessing and a curse. Sarah loved them more than life itself, but every time she took them back to Robbie, she felt the weight of what she had lost. Robbie had found a girlfriend a year after the divorce. A teacher named Jessica, kind and patient. Emma adored her. That hurt more than Sarah would ever admit. 3 years after the divorce, Sarah received a call from an unknown number. It was a woman who identified herself as a nurse from a hospital in New York. Am I speaking with Sarah Chen? Yes. Mr. Dylan Mitchell is in palliative care here. He asked us to try to contact some people. Your name was on the list. Sarah felt her stomach turn. Why does he want to talk to me? He's making amends before he passes. He has only a few days to live. Tell him I hope he's made peace with God, because I'll never forgive him. Sarah hung up. She blocked the number. 3 days later, she saw the obituary online. Dylan Mitchell, 47 years old, deceased from pancreatic cancer. Survived by his wife and 3 children. Sarah looked at that photo, Dylan smiling, his wife beside him, the children around. A family he had destroyed with his actions, just as he had destroyed hers. She closed the laptop and realized something strange. She expected to feel anger. Or satisfaction. Or sadness. But she only felt emptiness. Dylan had been such a destructive presence in her life, and now he was simply done. Dead. Gone. And life continued. Sarah looked out the window. Emma and Lucas were in the backyard. She had custody of them that weekend. Emma was 8 years old now, Lucas 6. They were bigger, more independent. Emma was still closer to her father, but had gotten used to the dynamic of two houses. "Mom!" Lucas shouted. "Come play with us." Sarah smiled and went out. She played tag until she was breathless. She made dinner, spaghetti, their favorite food. She gave them baths, read stories, sang lullabies. When they both fell asleep, she sat down and picked up a notebook. She had started writing recently. Nothing she would show anyone, just thoughts. "Dylan died today," she wrote. "I always imagined I'd feel something when that day came. But I can only think about how much time he wasted. How much time I wasted. He spent his life manipulating women, collecting stolen moments, building a castle of lies. And in the end, he died alone in a hospital, trying to make amends with strangers who hated him." Sarah stopped writing and looked at the photos on the wall. Emma and Lucas laughing. She and Robbie still appeared in some, from before the divorce. She had offered to take down the photos, but Robbie said the children deserved to remember when they were a complete family. He was right. He was always right. Sarah returned to the notebook. "I lost my marriage. Lost the trust of the man I loved. Lost the chance for my children to grow up in a home with both parents. And why? For a few moments of pleasure? To feel desired? What I had with Dylan was never real. It was fantasy, it was escape, it was weakness." She closed her eyes and thought about all the choices she made. Accepting that first drink. Going up to his room. Going back, always going back. Lying to Robbie. Building a family on a cracked foundation. "But I also learned," she continued writing. "I learned that loyalty matters. That you can hurt the people you love in irreparable ways. That some choices echo throughout your entire life. I learned that regret is real, it's physical, it's something you carry in your bones." Sarah thought about Robbie with Jessica. They were getting married in a few months. Emma would be the flower girl. Lucas, the ring bearer. Sarah had been invited, because Robbie was like that, generous to the end. She had politely declined, saying it would be strange for the children. But the truth was she couldn't watch. "I failed as a wife," she wrote. "That truth will follow me forever. But I can choose to be better as a mother. I can be present, honest, dedicated. I can teach my children about responsibility, about consequences, about making the right choice even when it's difficult. I can be an example, not of perfection, but of how to get up after falling." She looked at the ceiling. She imagined Dylan on his deathbed, trying to make amends. She imagined all those women he had used, all the families he had helped destroy. That chain of pain he had left behind. "Dylan died today," Sarah wrote again. "And the only thing I feel is relief that my story with him is truly over. He had power over me for so long, first as a lover, then as a blackmailer, then as the bomb that destroyed my marriage. But now he's just a memory. A lesson. A warning of what happens when you let weakness guide your choices." Sarah closed the notebook. She checked on the children one more time, both sleeping deeply. She washed the dinner dishes. Prepared the lunch boxes for the next day. Folded the clean clothes. Did all the small tasks that made up her life now. It was a smaller life than she had imagined. Alone at 39 years old, divorced, with 2 children of separated parents. But it was an honest life. It was a life she had rebuilt from scratch after almost losing everything. Sarah turned off the lights and went to bed. She lay looking at the empty ceiling. She remembered when she shared that bed with Robbie, when she'd wake up in the morning and he was there, when life seemed simple and safe. She had thrown all of that away. Why? For the thrill? For the novelty? Because she was bored? The reason seemed so small now, so insignificant compared to what she had lost. But from that pain, from that loss, had come something unexpected. A clarity. An understanding that every action has weight, every choice has consequences. Sarah had learned the hardest way possible what loyalty meant. What regret meant. What responsibility meant. She could never go back in time and undo her mistakes. She could never rebuild what she had with Robbie. She could never give her children the intact family they deserved. But she could wake up every day and choose to be better. She could be the present mother Emma and Lucas needed. She could be the ethical professional her colleagues admired. She could be the woman who looked in the mirror and recognized her flaws without being destroyed by them. Dylan had died trying to make amends. But peace was something each person had to find within themselves. And Sarah was trying. Every day, she was trying. She closed her eyes and let sleep come. Tomorrow would be a new day. Emma had a presentation at school. Lucas had soccer. Life continued, with all its small joys and pains, its triumphs and failures. And Sarah would be there for every moment. Because if she had learned anything from everything she'd been through, it was that being present, really present, honestly present, was the only kind of redemption that truly mattered. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.